Well, Shannon, you talk about the differences between like academia and like an industry, and I'm particularly interested. I mean, I'm obviously in the U.S. Krish, you're in
Right.
India. Shannon, you're in I forget. Sorry, one more time.
Thailand.
Thailand. That's what it is.
Thailand. Yeah.
I think it'd be interesting to talk about the different how data science like hiring, how those types of roles might be different across the different countries. Because I have a lot of students from India that ask me questions about their resume, their projects, but honestly, I can't speak to the hiring process in India quite as well, and I don't think it's necessarily fair for me to give them advice that might apply in the US and not in India. Are there any things that you might notice in your different countries than from where I am that might be different in that whole process, different about the way things go about when either hiring or when you're talking to different companies?
So if I talk about India, if I just go 3 years back, initially data science, machine learning hiring, deep learning hiring, because I came from a developer background. I was a software engineer before. I was working in .NET programming language. At that time, when I was getting hired, it was for me, it became a little bit easy because I just focused at that time specifically. I'm talking about. I just focused on the academic part. I learned all the things, all the algorithms, and some basic implementation, how to actually implement those. But now, as we are going now in this year, right, in 2020 specifically, now things are becoming more competitive. Now, apart from the academic knowledge, they're also looking at how people can implement projects end to end. And right now, considering that, and not only, I also do the hiring in my company. I interview people, I know what my higher management people are looking at, what kind of work they can actually do. So now the combination of both academy plus the practical implementation part is pretty much important. Apart from that, it is always good that you become a good data science community contributor itself. Try to contribute in some open source project, open source libraries. That is also pretty much important, because now people are doing that. If I take an example of Google Summer of Code internship, right, people are getting that internship. How? Because they are able to contribute in the open source community. So considering this, it is important that you all do all those things. And just imagine if in your resume you say that, okay, you're writing blogs for the data science community, you are also participating in the open source community, open source libraries. How good it look for the recruiter also, right? Because you're already working in that community where your products are actually getting used by so many people, right? So if you have all those things, now I think then only you are getting interview calls, you are getting hired as a data scientist altogether. And companies are also knowing these things. They are seeing the market, they're seeing that how this community is actually changing, and based on that, they're taking the interviews and they're calling people for the interviews itself.
Very cool. It's interesting. I actually think to a certain extent in India, the data science hiring process is a little bit more systemized than in the US. I think that there's probably a little more focus on technical ability, and that makes it perhaps easier to prepare, because you might know what to expect a little bit more. In the US, you don't know what you're going to get. You could either go, maybe on the West Coast where it's very, very highly technical, or, somewhere in the Midwest, East Coast, people are really focused on business value. And I think business value is really important for data scientists. But that's where you get into these two different, are you going to be a data scientist that helps with the business problem implementation, or are you going to be more a machine learning engineer where you're less focused on the business and you're more focused on getting the models into production? And I think that dichotomy in the US makes it really hard to know what type of position you're applying for. So you have to prepare with this whole breadth of interviewing methodology, which, obviously with some research, with talking to recruiters, things like that, hopefully you can figure out what these companies are looking for more. But it isn't by any means an easy problem. And hopefully, having conversations like these help people to understand that, like, wow, like this can be different regionally, this can be different nationally. Every company even is a little bit different. So, I got very lucky. I think we all it's a combination of luck and skill to get a job. And the more positions you try, the more you do it, the luckier you get, right?
Yes.
Right.
Very cool.
Yeah. So on my end, in academia, so the hiring process might be the simplest because the thing is, there's very few computer science background or software engineer who would apply to the university. So what we would do is to only have a interview, and we would probably ask them to show us like, what is your GitHub profile if you have any, or what is your portfolio? Could you show me some of the projects that you have previously done? So there's no take-home coding exam or any other exam as such. So just pure interview.
Very cool.
Okay.